Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on the Buddha's Light International Association Oceania Dharma Symposium on the topic, how can Buddhism benefit our health? We have three panel speakers with us today. First, I would like to introduce to you Venerable Zhefan. She is the General Manager of Xingyun Education Foundation and has taken a PhD research studies at Peking University, China, and involved in the application of awakening of faith in the Mahayana as an education theory. Second, we have Dr. Nadine Levy. She is the head of social well-being at Nantian Institute and holds a PhD in sociology and honors degree in both law and gender studies. Last but not least, we have Dr. Priscilla Wong. She is a family GP with the medical practice in Randwick here in Sydney and graduated from University of New South Wales in 2003. After that, she completed her residency in Prince of Wales Hospital and has done further training and became a general practitioner in 2019. So we have these accolades of speakers today with us. I'm very, very fortunate to be able to welcome them on board, and would like to obviously start off with a few questions and just to get their insights on this topic of how does Buddhism benefit our health. Over the recent years, the pandemic have really changed all of us. And a lot of us had to learn not to take things for granted and learn to appreciate every moment that we have, either with our families or even ourselves. I thought a good question to start off with the panel speakers today would be, what does health mean to you? And what does that mean? What does it mean to be healthy? Based on the World Health Organization, they define that healthy is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. The most common New Year's resolution, which we all agree that we all do, are relating to diet, eating healthy, exercising more, or some other aspects of health. So let's start off with Priscilla on her perspective from the healthcare point of view. As a GP, what does health mean to you, and what does it mean to be healthy?
Thank you, Ella, and thank you, BLIA Venerable Nadine, for organising the session. It's a great question to start off with because I don't think we ever think that closely about the definitions, and we tend to focus on diseases and fixing them. But this definition reminds us that there's a human and we need to consider the whole person. And it's a definition I grew up with, obviously, through medical school. It's known as the biopsychosocial model. And I think it's considering those physical, mental, and social elements is really important. The first point I'd like to bring up is that we often forget the social element. But in many ways, I think through experience, it's actually the most important thing. And as an example, there's areas in the world called the blue zones, and I don't know if you might have heard of them. There's five of them, I believe: Japan, Italy, Greece, certain areas, California, and South America, where the citizens seem to live to beyond 100. And for me, that's a pretty good indicator of good physical health. So, as well as factors like a good plant-based diet, movement and exercise, they really found that citizens there have good social connections, a sense of purpose, well-being in relation to their community. So that was the first point I really wanted to emphasize with the definition. Personally, as a Buddhist practitioner, I think we understand impermanence and that it's pretty impossible to be well in every aspect all the time. So for me, a big part of it is empowering the patient. So having the resources to navigate challenges, and those resources include physical ones, so basic things like adequate food, money, having cognitive tools to face challenges as well, I think is really important. So for us as practitioners, it's having those Buddhist tools to work through when we're facing challenges. And as we spoke about, social supports, so friends, family, community, and I think a little bit where I come in, a local doctor as well. So, Ellen, as you said earlier, you're a friend, and I work as your general practitioner, and I'm so privileged to be a part of that health journey with you. I think a lot of young people don't see doctors, and I'd really encourage them to consider it, because while when you're healthy, you think, oh, GP, probably just go for a medical certificate or some antibiotics. It's over time, one more person who knows you. So one more person who knows how your decision-making is, what's important to you, what health means to you, and what healthy means in your life. And that's kind of a very personal definition. So one more trusted source of information, and someone who knows the system, because it is a complex health system out there. So, as I said, community, having trusted support, and a GP to help you navigate. Thank you.
Sounds like a great, obviously, these points are very important for us. And thank you for being part of my health journey, Priscilla. And I think it's, like you said, it's important to have that someone there that you can actually go to as well to speak to about, other parts of your life, which is your health. I think which we all tend to forget. And I guess coming to our next speaker, our panel speaker here, which is Dr. Nadine, I'd like to ask you the same question. What does health mean to you, and what does it mean to be healthy?
A really good question, and we don't often reflect on it. So I would echo everything that Priscilla said. I 100% agree. And I'd also add that, at least from a Buddhist perspective, we don't really separate the body and mind. So when we think of this question, we can think of it in relation to the mind-body complex, or the embodied mind. Our minds really impact our bodies, and our bodies our mind as well. For example, we know that stress can have a significant impact on our physiology. And that's why tending to our minds like we do in meditation can lead to better health outcomes. In addition, in Buddhist thought, we are taught to expect periods of ill health, right? Physical ill health. It's what it means to be human. So good health to me includes an understanding that we will get sick, and perhaps we'll get very sick if we're lucky, and that how we relate to it is really the most important thing. So how we relate to our bodies when they're sick means a lot to our health, our overall health. I also wanted to add to what Priscilla said about resourcing, so finding a support network, either through the people we socialise with or health professionals. And I just wanted to say that the way I think about it is internal and external resourcing. So what are our internal resources? We can rely on our meditation practice. We can rely on other types of practices that are religious, like some of us might pray, for example. Others might attend a temple or a church. These are internal resources that we can draw on when things get challenging. And then there are a whole raft of external resources we can use as well. Like, for example, when I know I'm about to face a really stressful period, I make sure my nutrition is really good, that I'm doing movement every day, that I'm trying to get 8 to 9 hours of sleep a night so that I can feel a bit more resilient. And I know that resilience has been a bit of a buzzword over the last little while, but I do think it's something we need to think about, because times are changing, and as we know, things are getting more challenging. We're dealing with viruses, and there might be more, and we're dealing with issues like natural disasters. Here in Australia, we've had flooding, bushfires raging throughout the world. So resilience is very important internally and also for communities. Lastly, I'd say that the social environment we find ourselves in is really crucial to our mental and physical health. And I would say that because I'm trained as a sociologist, but I think there's a lot of evidence out there to indicate that what our environment's like and say our access to healthcare makes a huge impact on our lives. For example, I know in certain countries where healthcare is really expensive, it's not free, people delay seeing a doctor or seeing a health practitioner. So we should never take for granted free healthcare, which we have by and large in Australia to a certain extent, and we should take advantage of it when it's available to us. Also, who we spend time with and the activities we do really matter. And I think that engaging in community activities can be a huge source of support, and being around healthy communities. So people with good values that you agree with, people who walk, for example, going out for a coffee and going for a walk is a great way to socialise, and being with people who make you feel seen and connected and heard. Those types of social aspects really do support our health. So really it's a holistic approach. It's a whole system that we're talking about, and there are many parts. So the invitation really is to reflect on what we can strengthen and what we can let go of, because there are, parts of our lives that aren't serving us well.
I love all that you've just shared. It's so important to actually, like you said, be part of the community as well, and really look at having that appreciation and in our mindset as well. And where you said, we're very lucky to be in a country where in Australia we do have free healthcare. And I think we have always maybe tend to forget that, but, being something that is, we shouldn't take it for granted. That's very important. So coming to Venerable, from your point of view, what does that mean to be healthy? I guess as a Buddhist practitioner yourself, what does health mean to you as well?
Thank you, Ellen. And once again, of course, I would echo what Priscilla and Nadine has said totally. To me, being healthy, apart from the physical or mental state of well-being, I think is the ability to smile. Just the ability to smile. I need the muscles that allow me to smile. I need the mentality to allow me to smile. And I need a self-recognition that I can smile. Smile is warmth. So this ability to smile. And I think that another thing is about having right view, because our perspective in life is actually very important. It's just like a wheel, a steering that brings us on our life journey, which is not always easy. There are lots of challenges. So whether we are physically healthy or not, mentally, our state of well-being, whatever state it is, perhaps a right view will be very important, because this would also include what kind of doctors, what kind of medical advices do we take in, do we listen to, what kind of lifestyle do we lead. So having this right view in the Buddhist perspective, perhaps it is a few things that we must recognize. One is that I am a human being. So in my natural state of existence, there will be challenges, there will be ups and downs, there will be times when I'm more healthy, sometimes when I do have difficulties. So that is it. It is just part of us. And it is also a human desire to seek happiness. There is nothing wrong with that. It's perfectly well. And it is also us as humans to resist pain and also seek pleasure. So if we do have all these things that is just an innate part in us, how do we recognize that life itself is actually inherently not satisfactory? So we are not satisfied most of the time. In the Buddhist perspective, or the Buddhist terms will be dukkha, and some people translate that as suffering. So how do we make ourselves less suffering, therefore more healthy? Perhaps it's a homework that we really have to do throughout our lives. So, and of course, no man is an island. We need people around us, our family, our friends, or just people whom we feel warmth with. So perhaps to me, it is also about us being holistic, as in like, I see myself in a holistic point of view where I am actually a whole, not only a part which is only physical or only mental, but it is physical, mental, spiritual. And perhaps the word that I would prefer to use would be heartfulness. how do we face ourselves, me as a human being, embrace my own humanness while I seek a path towards Buddhahood.
Very insightful there, Venerable. I think, there's a lot of points that each of our panel speakers actually brought up, which comes to my mind. When people talk about health, what comes to our mind is, physical health, which each one of our panel speakers has mentioned. So just some interesting facts. Australia performs really well in terms of overall population health status. We are at 82.2 years of life expectancy. We are the 6th highest in the OECD. And I have recently read one of the series called Life's 10,000 Affairs by Venerable Master Xing Yun, who is the founder of Forerunner, which we're all part of and related to in some way. He wrote a daily piece that gets published in the Merit Times. And in this article, he talks about the murderer or the killers in our life. So the first point he mentioned is not eating right is like a killer to our health. We eat to survive, but eating unhealthy food is destroying our own health. He reminds us that a lot of diseases arises from what we consume over the years. Therefore, for us to stay healthy, it is important that we need to be conscious of what we do eat in our daily lives. So, Priscilla, from this, obviously, this little sort of series and piece that I've read recently, what do you think of what Master Xing Yun is saying? And in terms of what he said, how do you think this could be incorporated into our lives? Or am I now clutching the straw here by saying Buddhism benefits our physical health as well?
No, definitely. I think you're not clutching at straws, and I absolutely agree with what Master's saying. And it's not just what we eat, and I think this comes back to our Buddhist practices, but why we eat, how we eat, and thinking of where our food comes from. So all this is very much part of Buddhism and the teaching, also to practice at every moment. So every opportunity, every moment and every meal is an opportunity to practice. So most of us usually get at least 3 meals a day. So it's 3 times a chance to practice. So we could see it that way. Venerable uses quite strong words there. So he says food can be a killer and a murderer. I think you mentioned, Ellen, there. And I'd say he's right. So in my experience, I'll talk about 3 situations. So, and I think we can all relate at different times to this. One is when we're just stressed and eating and just grabbing the first thing we can get, which is probably not very nutritious at all, just fast food. And it really manifests over time. So people will come in with stress ulcers and acid burn and not realize what's happening. And other times, and it's just been Easter, so other times we'll overindulge a bit and just eat purely for enjoyment. And if this becomes a chronic thing, it can be quite dangerous as well. And particularly if you've got a bit of a genetic tendency, it can lead to conditions like obesity, diabetes, and other lifestyle-related conditions, which are actually the biggest problem for us in terms of physical health in the world today. And then conversely, and it always is, you get problems with aversion to food. And instead of the overindulgence, people can become quite fastidious and picky about their foods. And the impact of body image and social media on young people is quite damaging. And so the rise of eating disorders in young people is directly related to an eating and food-related perception. So I think Venerable Master's quite correct. So I think in our eating, if we come back to the principles of the middle way, so not too much craving, not too much aversion, and really remembering our intention every time we eat, we can be reminded to be just a little more slow, a little more mindful, a little more conscious, environmental, and healthy. And because this was a question about physical health, I think those principles can be really applied to a lot of other health practices like exercise or sleep. You can see that the same problems come up when you overindulge in exercise or sleep or neglect them or completely avoid thinking about them. So I think Venerable Master's right, and that Buddhism really is an encompassing practice for our physical health.
That's true. It does remind me back in the days when I used to go to Buddhist camps at Nantian Temple, where we actually do live, I guess, a week or a few days of a life of a practice, person like such as Venerable. We do actually wake up the same time as the Venerables, which is like, really early for someone. And for a teenager, it was pretty early, around about 5:30, we had to wake up, and then we would go and follow the Venerables to go and do chanting in the morning. And you can imagine chanting in another language is probably just another thing that is not on top of our mind, especially when you feel like you haven't had enough of sleep. But so the question obviously comes to Venerable, how does, I guess, Buddhism benefit our physical health? And I guess I did mention a little bit about this day in a life in a temple. How does that work, and what does that entail? And I guess can you give us some sort of background on that as well?
Maybe I could just share with you my typical day, which I think most people would be interested to know. So as a monastic in Fo-Guang-Shan, which is part of BLIA, our day typically starts at 5:30 or 6. So here in Nantian Temple, I'm a resident in Nantian Temple. So it starts at 6 with the traditional bells and drums ceremonies and morning chanting. So this will end at about 7:10 to 7:15, where we will have a very short break before we have our breakfast at 7:30. Finished before 8, we will be going around our routines of cleaning up the environment, where the specific areas that we are involved, we are responsible for. And then we have a Tai Chi from 8:30 to about 8:50. And then we are off to our duties, which starts at about 9. So then lunch at around 12. And we will have our afternoon duties again, maybe in the office, in the shrines, and whatever duties that we do. And at night, most of us, we have got classes. So for example, I take a few study groups. So it's my time to prepare for these classes, to be part of the classes, and we have meetings and so on. So that's a typical day for us. But I should say that busy is the word, because we don't have, we just never finish all our work. But apart from being busy, I think the Buddhism or the Buddhist practice actually benefits our physical health. One is that we remain mindful. As much as we are busy, we always remind ourselves that be mindful in every moment. So, in the Buddha's time, he will be teaching the whole day or walking around to teach. So that was the Buddha's practice. And when Buddhism came to China, as in most of us are from the Chinese lineage, so from India to China, there is this phrase that the master said that, without work, we should not eat. So it's only through work that we are able to receive these offerings of food. So now in this contemporary arena, what we are doing is that, of course, we put our life, our full attention into the work, which is to promote Buddhism or to enhance happiness in a way or another. So apart from this, being mindful, perhaps in our cooking, in our chanting, in our gardening, or in all sorts of teaching and all our work. Another thing that actually I begin to realize after about around 20 years of practice, it's actually gratitude, being able to appreciate the opportunity that I have to live, to breathe, to move, to serve. So this sense of gratitude, especially during meals when we have to chant the 4 verses of BLIA. So it actually ends off with a sense of gratitude that I'm grateful for the food that I have, for the environment that I'm able to live in, for all these conditions. But also I hope to expand my heart, as in have a bigger heart, to have a greater ability to generate more positive emotions, more positive energy, more positive conditions for the society, for the environment, or for anyone whom I get in touch with. So perhaps this, from the physical state of, you're asking about how Buddhism benefits our physical health. I must say that a plant-based diet, a way of life that we are leading now, a way of life that is really the middle path, that is not too difficult, I must say, but of course it is not luxurious at all. So all these things will actually benefit us with gratitude and with a right state of mind. It definitely benefits our physical health.
Thank you, Venerable. What you're talking about earlier actually brings me back to the memories of when I attended the short-term monastics. This was a long time ago. And like you said, it is a very simple life. But at the same time, what actually stuck in my head is, even though all these practice of just eating, but eating mindfully is actually something that we all don't actually do. We potentially, when we go out to eat, what eats first? Our phone. Rather than, thinking what we're actually going to eat. We actually take out our phones and actually use them and go, hey, hold on, I need to put this on my Instagram or my feed and so forth. But that's, everyone has a different, obviously, ways of eating. But I think, eating mindfully is actually quite a good practice. It's just such a good reminder for myself as well that, I need to do that. I think, what Master has said actually does have a point, and it's very key to why some of us probably are feeling some of the stress because we're not eating right or we're not doing the way that we should be. Which comes to, I guess, the topic on this. Nadine, what do you think of what Master Xing Ying has kind of mentioned there, which is, obviously, how can we incorporate what he said into our daily life?
Yeah. Like the other panelists, I think it's crucially important, and we can often dismiss something as small, like, eating's not a big deal. I just do it quickly and I do it to survive. But it also offers this amazing practice opportunity that both Venerable and Priscilla mentioned as well. It's a moment where you get to nourish your body and mind, and usually there have been others involved in producing the food. So that moment of reflection is also a really beautiful opportunity. In terms of Buddhism and physical health, I think that if we are mindful, we naturally make better choices. And if you actually watch how bad food makes you feel, you're less likely to habitually make poor choices. The same goes for movement and intoxicants. When we bring our attention to our bodily and mental experience after we've indulged in something, we can see that we don't feel as good as we imagined or hoped, right? And I notice this in myself. If I eat very late at night, and I eat a lot at night, I wake up feeling really heavy. Whereas if I eat lightly at night, or I even skip a meal at night, I can wake up feeling really energetic and light and ready to take on the world, and I've slept better. So I think instead of, having some notion of how to eat and what to do, it's better just to watch your own body and do that mindfully and watch how your body reacts to certain foods, when you might eat, how much you might eat. And I think that your body actually does give you some really good feedback and some indicators as to, how to, I suppose, embark on the middle way, something that we've already discussed. I also think that as people who aspire to embark on the path of service, which many of us are, we know that our capacity to help others rests on our physical health. And that's a real motivator for me, because I know I've got a son who relies on me and potentially an aging parent, and there are friends and family members who rely on me. And so for me, when I can't conjure up the motivation just for myself, my small self, I think about my place within my community, and that helps me to make decent lifestyle choices. And I think that that's really important, to keep in mind the fact that your physical health isn't just about you, it's about your community and those around you. I just wanted to say, though, that there are some moments in life where it's not always possible to make good health choices. There are many things that get in the way of decent lifestyle choices. Not everyone has access to good, fresh food. Some people are dealing with emotional issues. Sometimes work-life balance is completely out of kilter, and that can really get in the way of taking some good steps to address our physical health. So instead of feeling bad about that or shame, because we all go through these moments, my suggestion is to try and kind of investigate mindfully some of the causes and conditions that are present that get in the way of making these lifestyle choices. So bringing some investigation to your situation could really help you to see things more clearly and to try and at least acknowledge that something's going on that needs to be addressed.
Good point there. I think a good work-life balance is very important, and sometimes a little bit hard to achieve. And I'm actually, culprit for that. I'm always sitting at my desk eating my lunch when I think I should be away from it. But I know that I do. The one good thing I do is I actually set aside a time for lunch, which is one thing I could do for myself. I mean, I guess it's something that we all learn to adjust in, especially from the last 2 years. We've been working from home. Some of us been working from home. So it's a little bit hard to peel ourselves away from our desk sometimes. But I think some people do a better job than myself. But I guess it's definitely a choice that we need to learn to make, like you said, make a better choice as well. So coming to the next part, I would like to sort of bring back what I mentioned earlier, which is health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not just merely an absence of disease or infirmity, which is the physical or mental weakness. So we are now in the post-pandemic stage. We have such a lifestyle change over the last few years, and where, like I said, a lot of us work from home and have limited access to space or even human contact, and the change of environment, which does drive major adjustments in our lives. So I want to explore how to keep a healthy state of mind. So what I can imagine is, a lot of us think of how do we keep a healthy state of mind is we think of these buzzwords such as self-care, mindful practice, achieving some happiness, learning how to deal with changes and resilience, which Nadine, you mentioned there earlier. So there are obviously tips on how to, improve our mental health, which, I've actually got myself some facts from online where it says 1 in 5 Australians are affected by mental health illness annually. So, but a lot of people, and yet many of them don't seek out for help due to the stigma of it. So first person I'd like to ask is Venerable. Can you just share your insights to mental health and Buddhism, and how do you think we can use Buddhism to keep a healthy state of mind?
Thank you, Ellen. I think you have brought up a very important question, especially about mental health. How do we face mental health, and how do we properly recognize what mental health is all about? So to me, just now I've said about embracing our own humanness. I'm a human being, which means that I am not perfect. I'm definitely not perfect, but I wish that I could be better. There are a lot of states of existence that I wish I am. And that difference between what I wish I am and where I am, that difference is actually a big challenge for us. Because most of the time, I wish that I'm much better. I could be like 80 or a grade A, but in actual fact, I'm just a B or a C. How do I face the reality that I'm not good enough from my perspective? So embracing our own humanness, which is we are just imperfect beings. I am imperfect, which means that most of the people around me, we are not perfect. This could be a very important key for us to really face ourselves. It's not that I appreciate myself, but at least I recognize where I am. That would be a path to awakening, or rather just a path for us to really feel that our feet is on the ground and not, floating in the air, which makes it very difficult. So a few things that I thought would be important, a Buddhist perspective that would be important for a healthy state of mind would be to embrace our humanness. We are imperfect, but on the other hand, it is to really recognize our immense capacity, which in the Buddhist terms will be the Buddha nature, the capacity for us to be the best that we can be. So on these both sides, embracing our humanness and also embracing our Buddha-ness, I will call that. So between these two, perhaps it will really put our feet on the ground for us to be able to travel on this road that is not always smooth. And there are a few things in Buddhism that I think would also relate to mental health. Just now in the first question, I think Priscilla mentioned about the whole person. And I shared about the notion of heartfulness. So what is heartfulness? It is actually the opening and cultivating of our heart through inner stillness and silence, becoming more human, more compassionate, more responsible, both to ourselves and also to other beings. And here, being more compassionate, it seems that a lot of people, of course, now especially with COVID, there is a lot of buzzwords such as self-care, mindful practice. But I would think that compassion is actually feeling with. So there should be this emphasis that we should be connecting to ourselves and also to a larger meaning in our individual selves. So this is about finding meaning in making a difference in the life of others. And apart from this compassion, I think there are also four other key values, I would think. And maybe there are also a mental state of existence that would also bring us from the state of humanness to the state of Buddha-ness. So the first is loving kindness. Loving kindness is actually a very common value in Buddhism. And to put it simply, I would say that loving kindness is the joy of generating well-being for self and also for others. The joy of generating well-being. It is not only about the joy of well-being, but generating. So it is just like a positive, continuous tense where we continue to do that. And generating would also mean that we have the resilience, the energy, the ability to increase. And the second value would be compassion. What is compassion? I think it's more than kindness. It is about responding to human suffering. So it's actually our responsiveness to human suffering, which includes ourselves, because I'm a human being, my own suffering, my own I'm not satisfied, and also me responding to another person's suffering. So this is compassion. The third value or the third mental state of mind would be altruistic joy, rejoicing in the happiness of others. So in the first question I shared about, it is our human desire. It is human to desire happiness. So I would like happiness. I acknowledge that you would also desire happiness. But is it possible for me to rejoice that you are achieving, enjoying happiness? That is not easy. So having altruistic joy, perhaps to put our mind our mental, our heart in a greater plane, a wider plane, because we are able to share, to rejoice in another person's happiness. And the fourth value perhaps would be equanimity, which is unconditional impartiality. So most of us, we are actually very occupied with ourselves, with the people whom we feel we are connected to, for example, our family, our best friends, our colleagues whom we like, our neighbors whom are kind to me, or some people who holds the same passport as me. But being a person, perhaps if we could have a bit more impartiality in our mind, which includes unconditional impartiality, which is actually equanimity, again, it puts our heart on a greater plane. There is more space in our heart, which actually helps us to be able to maneuver in our lives, and that makes us perhaps a healthier state of mind. So with this, I would think that loving kindness, compassion, altruistic joy, and equanimity would be four very important values in Buddhism that will help us keep a healthy state of mind. But whatever it is most important, it is to embrace, to recognize our own humanness, and also to embrace, to recognize our Buddha-ness. Yeah.
Thank you, Venerable Jeffan. Such a great insight there. I think the new buzzword now is humanness, which I can just see it coming through all the new Buddhist talks that we potentially will be going through. So coming to you, Nadine, I'd like to get you to share your perspectives on this topic, where we talked about mental health and Buddhism, and how can we use Buddhism to keep a healthy state of mind. Just, I guess, a few things that you can share from your perspective.
Oh, yes. Well, I loved listening to Venerable, and I love those four values. I think they're so beautiful, and keeping them in mind and in our heart at all times is definitely very supportive and protects us actually from the kind of self-cherishing mind that often gets in the way of living a good life. So, I just really value those. So the first thing I'd say about mental health is that we all have moments of bad or ill mental health. It's completely normal. As Venerable said, we're human beings, and that means that we've signed up to the good, the bad, and the ugly. And sometimes the ugly is ugly, and that's the truth. And so we all have certain vulnerabilities. Some of us are more predisposed to anxiety, others depression. Some of us are more predisposed to kind of delusion or ignorant thinking. So it's really good to know what in Buddhism we call them hindrances, what the hindrances are that are predominant in your mind at any time, and to be really gentle with yourself. And so I would say that, if you are experiencing a really bad patch of mental health, it's really great to get support and to reach out to professionals. There's no shame in that at all. In fact, most Buddhists I know see therapists, right? So it just shows that a lot of Buddhists out there are working on their mental health actively, and they find that it supports their spiritual practice and vice versa. So I wanted to normalise ill mental health and just state that, in this day and age, in modern life, with all of its stressors, and also our genetic makeup, means that we do often experience mental suffering, and that's part of life. Yeah. Okay, so in addition to that, I'd say that the Buddha stated that mind is forerunner of all things, and it's with our mind that we create our realities. So what's really interesting is that we often don't respect our minds in the way that we respect other things. Sometimes people respect their bodies more than their minds, but we often consume things quite willingly, like we scroll our phones or we watch something. We even allow our minds to proliferate in certain ways that are unhelpful. And we don't really think of, caring for the mind actively, proactively. I have seen an amazing thing in Buddhist practitioners. I've met very serious Buddhist practitioners who have been happy even when their physical body is very sick or even when they're dying. So I know that the mind makes a huge impact, and that really inspires me because it makes me have faith. I generate faith in the Buddhist path, and I realise that if it's practiced seriously, it can support you even when your body no longer supports you. So that's why mind is very important in all of this. And so if we think about how to cultivate the mind and care for the mind, obviously awareness and investigation are important, and also meaning. Priscilla's mentioned meaning and connection. And I think that when you love the Dharma, the nice thing about it is that you've got so many friends across the world who share similar values and who are quite similar to you. So that provides a lot of comfort connecting with Sanghas and other Buddhists across the world. And I also think that Buddhism offers this kind of supportive, symbolic base. So there are all these symbols and archetypes in Buddhism, like Kuan Yin, for example, that can really support and comfort you during darker times. And I know for myself that when I've had difficulty mentally, something's gone wrong in my life, mindfulness has been really difficult. So instead of mindfulness, I've chosen to rely on the bodhisattva and use that image to kind of soothe me. So the nice thing about Buddhism is that there are all these images, and there's a whole system out there that can provide you with psychological comfort. The other aspect of Buddhism that I think is really supportive to mental health is that it loosens our attachment to self, or the small self. And this kind of has this paradoxical effect, because what it means is that our problems become a bit lighter and looser, and our attachment kind of slackens. We're not so fixated with me, myself, and I, and we start to become less obsessed with our own suffering. And this is something that happens, of course, over long periods of practice. But when it does happen, you start to realise my suffering is not the most important thing in the world. It's important and it should be addressed. But there are many others suffering as well. And I think that what Venerable said about our common humanity linking to others in that compassionate way can really help our mental health, because the focus all of a sudden isn't just on this narrow experience. It's broadened out. Finally, I would say that the practice of self-compassion, which Venerable has gone into, drawing on certain images like the Buddha or Kuan Yin or, Jesus if you're Christian, can really provide you with support, and knowing that life involves suffering. It's not a mistake. You're not meant to be happy all the time. Can really help us to accept those difficult moments, and to learn from them as well. So ultimately we build a kind of a sense of insight, I suppose, into our suffering. We realise that it's part of life. Many people experience it. Usually if you're experiencing a particular form of suffering in that moment, someone else in the world is as well. And we can try and connect with that sense of being part of a human family. For me personally, in terms of my own mental health, I find that it's something that I need to work on continually, because you can get stressed, particularly if you're juggling a lot of things. And for me, I use silence and solitude to fill up my cup. And when I can, I do retreats. When I can, I sit in silence. And that's not always possible. But I quite like a recommendation that I heard from a Buddhist teacher, which is to find some alone time every day, even if it's just for 10 minutes, where you just don't have your phone on, you're not with others, and you can dip into that sense of silence. I think that's really, really vital. So thanks.
Thank you, Nadine. Such a great insights. And I think what you said actually reminded me of Master Ching, when you said, where someone who is so profound and able to still, provide and give to the Buddhist community, it's so important. I think Master Ching, lost his sight at early in his 80s, and he still continues to want to help all the Buddhist communities out there with his one-stroke calligraphy. Can you imagine being not being able to see, but still being able to write a calligraphy with one stroke. And, that kind of commitment and that kind of, determination is definitely, something that I always, find him very inspirational. So I definitely think, what you said had reminded me of that as well. So I really appreciate that. So coming to Priscilla, obviously the same question again. So what can you bring? What do you think Buddhism can bring to, in terms of keeping a healthy state of mind from your perspective?
Thanks, Ellen. And thank you, Venerable and Nadine. And I love what you've both said about particularly gentleness and self-care, non-self and losing that attachment, and those Brahma Viharas, the kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. So I actually don't have much to add to that. I'd probably, when I was thinking about this question, was really thinking about the fundamentals which Nadine and Venerable have already spoken about, and that is just acknowledging it and being able to acknowledge that humanness, which I think is really difficult, and that's what we've all brought up today. So for me, it's just that first noble truth and being able to really see it and understand it. And I can definitely see for myself that was a defining moment for me in Buddhism. Like, I can understand the concept, but really exploring it with that curiosity and investigation, which Nadine spoke about, is another step. So while on that first noble truth, while I think the concept of dukkha is seen as pessimistic by non-Buddhists, it's really actually quite liberating. So it's giving ourselves permission to not be perfect, as Venerable Jiufeng said. And I'd go a step further and to say, actually, there's such beauty in our imperfections. So we could probably all reflect on times we've learnt from our imperfections, on those emotions like anger and sadness and guilt. And just seeing those realities allowed us to take that first step to move forward and progress. And in my practice, what I'm finding and I'm really admiring in some of the young people who come is that they're having these conversations. And I think that's the great benefit of the last maybe 10, 15 years, because I don't think that was happening before. And they're being quite proactive in trying to understand with that curiosity and saying, I'm putting this in place, but it's not quite happening for me. I want to learn more. And they're making hard choices. And I really admire that. They're saying, I think I need to step back, take some time off work. I had one patient who had a corporate life, and it was just very difficult for her. And through the pandemic, she started taking agriculture and horticulture classes, and now she's completely switched careers. And that's a very difficult choice for her. But having gone through that process, I think, of acknowledging how difficult and impossible it was for her mentally, she's been able to come to a better place. So I think the acknowledgement is where I'll start, and continuing to practice with mindfulness to see the realities, and seeking help, whether it's with a mental health professional, a teacher, a venerable, or a friend. Thanks.
Sounds, definitely a lot to take from that as well. So I think when both Nadine and yourself said, finding a therapist or someone like that, I feel like my therapist is Venerable. I always go to her for my questions, and hopefully she doesn't, she's not too bothered by all my questions. But which obviously the next part I want to come to is I want to talk about the social well-being part of being in terms of health. The definition of social well-being is a sense of belonging to the community and making a contribution to the society. So throughout our lives, we learn to navigate how to interact with others, express ourselves, conduct everyday healthy habits, and obviously be part of different communities from those around us, and obviously building positive habits which can help to support and build our systems as well. And in that way, you know, makes us stay healthy mentally as well as physically. I know I've been part of a Buddhist community from a younger age. I volunteered with the BLIA, the Buddha's Light International Association Young Adult Division, gave me a sense of belonging, so a purpose, and also a purpose in life, and gave me an opportunity to not just learn, but improve in skills which, you know, I never used to have. For example, public speaking. I would never have done this in my past. Like years ago, if, you know, this wasn't, I guess, not being part of the temple. So it kind of gave me a different skill sets, which I didn't used to have. So, Venerable Jiufan, so what are some of the examples of how humanistic Buddhism benefits the well-being of the community?
Thank you, Ellen. I must say that although you acknowledge me as your therapist, I do go to you for many, many questions as well. So I think we are just like mutual therapists, assisting each other on our journey in life. So your question about how humanistic Buddhism benefits the well-being of our community, I think we must understand what humanistic Buddhism is all about. So as a strong advocator, a practitioner of humanistic Buddhism, Venerable Master Xing Yun's definition of humanistic Buddhism is actually anything that enhances happiness in our lives. So we see that, for example, our temples or BLIA, Buddha's Light International Association. There are actually a few areas that we do to benefit the well-being of the community. For example, there are about 300 temples established by Venerable Master Xing Yun around the world. All temples are opened every day, almost every day. All temples actually open our doors to the community. Anybody can come in. So these people who comes in, they actually enjoy moments of peace and joy, and also the religious element in these temples. It becomes the pillar of strength in these people. So I think this also in a way, it contributes to the well-being of an individual coming into the temple. The second thing is that these temples, and together with BLIA, we hold many educational sessions, talks, symposiums, all these. The purpose of this, actually, one very important thing is to enhance right view. Right view, of course, it helps us to work our life through. It helps us to increase awareness, which is also to increase our awakened presence. This leads actually to insight. And with this insight, it stimulates wisdom, stimulates creativity, flexibility, receptivity, and most importantly, it empowers or engages us in life. This will help us actually increase our relatedness to another person and also compassion for ourselves and for others. So with compassion, it actually decreases fearfulness and also motivates problem solving and inspires confidence. I think so far what I've said is quite theoretical, but just come to one thing. Because it inspires confidence, this dynamic responsiveness to our life is actually an awakened process in life. It is actually awakened presence in action that actually helps us transform our own relationship with our own life's ups and downs. So that's the theoretical part. But in actual sense, through the activities of BLIA or the temples, perhaps supporting education like NTI, the Nantian Institute, is a good example that what we are doing to enhance the well-being of the community. Arts, culture, And recently, in the past 10 or 20 years, we have done a lot to plant trees, to promote a plant-based diet. All these things, when these people come in, we are actually building on a platform of togetherness, connectedness, and a sense of purpose of these participants. So with this, I believe that in this journey, we actually enhance the sense of capacity, because what I can do alone is actually quite limited. Like Ellen, she's one of the top volunteers that the Nantian Temple has everywhere. She can do like almost everything, especially in events. So she has always very humbly said that, it's because of BLIA with all the temple opportunities that she is able to do ABCD, so many things. But we could see that these are opportunities for us to enhance our sense of capacity, that, I can do that. I can improve. I can have a purpose in life, a greater purpose in life. I can express myself. So I believe all these are examples, events or the physical temples, and all these are actually examples of how humanistic Buddhism benefits the well-being of the community, because all of us are part of the community.
Thank you, Venerable. Thank you for your kind words as well. So definitely, obviously I do have a lot to learn still. I know even though I've been practicing Buddhist for quite a few years, but, there are still a lot to learn. I always find that going to each event, there is always something new that I could learn. And I think, learning isn't just on the screen or through a course or whatever, but I think learning is actually through people around you, like you said, the community. So, which comes to the courses in Nantian Institute. So, for Nadine, this will be a question for you. What are some of the courses that Nantian Institute actually offers, and what do they focus on? And can you give us some insights what we can take out of these courses?
Yeah, sure. We offer 4 courses. So we offer a course in Applied Buddhist Studies, a course in Humanistic Buddhism, a course in Health and Social Wellbeing, and a course in Mental Health. And I can talk to Health and Social Wellbeing because that's the course that I have oversight over and I teach into. And a lot of what we've talked about, we explore in the course in greater depth. I guess what I wanted to say in response to Venerable is that I love the fact that we're talking about integrating these Buddhist insights into our actual lives in relationships in a very human way, not denying the fact that, we do live these lives with family and communities, etc. So I really appreciate that about humanistic Buddhism. So in terms of health and social well-being, the program was designed based on a few presumptions, Buddhist presumptions, which I'm sure you won't be surprised about. The first is that we're not individual entities that exist in the world. We're very dependent, we're relational, and we can see this in our children, for example. We can see when our kids grow up how much they need from others in order to thrive, right? And in order just to develop their sense of self. And we can also see this at the end of the life spectrum when someone's aging. They too are dependent in various ways, or those who are sick rely on social support and connection. So in this way, we're very much an interdependent community. So it would be strange to talk about health in a vacuum without addressing some of the social and community dimensions of health. And the course gives us the skills to think this through logically and clearly, and to consider ways to improve both our individual and collective well-being, because we're all part of the body of the world, so to speak. We're all part of this one body as human beings. In terms of social well-being, which is, I think, what you mentioned a bit earlier, I'd say that learning about our privileges as citizens or residents of a society or community is really important. I was thinking just today about the fact that, electricity, for example, is governed by our government. and that really are relying on the government for our electricity. We don't often make these connections, but many things we take for granted actually come from others. So reflecting on some of our privileges as citizens, as well as our responsibilities. So I think this course really gives students the time and space that they need to think about how they're called to serve the community, what aspect of society they'd like to contribute to based on their own values and strengths. And we all have different responses to that question, of course. And this opportunity in this course is something we don't often get. I don't know about you, but when I'm busy, I don't often reflect on, where I am at in life, what really calls me, what I'm drawn to do, how I want to serve. So this course offers a little pocket of time, a few years, for people who've been working or people who are about to enter work to actually think through, what is it I want to do? How do I want to serve, and how will I look after myself while I serve others? So that's really the focus of the course, in addition to some more health-oriented content, like the basics, for example. And we've got a course in there on compassion specifically, one on mindfulness specifically. We've got one on psychotherapy. I keep talking about therapy today. I'm not sure why. We've got a course on mind-body wellness and the connection between mind and body, and so on and so forth. So it really is a fantastic offering, and I'm really very privileged to be involved in it.
Sounds like quite an interesting course there. I wish that this course was around when I finished uni. So when I was still finding my ways of life, that could have given me a bit of break to learn a bit more about myself, I guess. So coming to you, Priscilla, how do you think being part of the Buddhist community have helped you in your work as a GP?
Thanks, Ellen. And I'm keen to do the NTI course too. So like you, Ellen, I volunteer and I love it. So I thought I'd be helping and serving, but again, I found that I was learning so much and gaining so much, and I really resonate with the skills and benefits that Venerable Jeff Wong was talking about. So the life lessons for me would have been really about understanding teamwork, about interconnectedness, and there's so many hearts and hands that come together, like in projects like the amazing Buddha's Birthday Festival that is held every year, the communities of practice events. And in each of those projects, I think, like Ellen, you were saying, there's so many skills and personalities and ideas that are creating and changing and adjusting and forgiving. And the results are, again, not perfect, but they're so heartwarming and perfect in their own way. So that's been a real practice of no self for me. And it is quite different to, the typical work study environment that we grew up in, which is a little bit individualistic and competitive at times and a bit rigid as well. So for me, the volunteering experience has been great to provide a different perspective on my work. So it's been both humbling and liberating. So very Mahayanan. Secondly, if I may, I think I found lifelong friends on the same path. I think, as Nadine was saying, I meet the communities of practice every Sunday. So for the last couple of years, all around the world, we meet online for half an hour. And having community, so people who understand why you do what you do and with the same values. I think I met up with some friends at the beach the other day from COP, and within 5 minutes, we were laughing that we'd already started talking about death and suffering, which doesn't happen in any other group that I'm with. So these friends, I think, really help you with your practice and allow you to discover and explore. And they allow you to fail, to try new things. And they're just real friends who are happy to witness you along the path and give you the privilege of witnessing them. So that's been really special for me. And I am so grateful for being involved in Nantian and having that experience. There's a great line from the Buddha where he corrects Ananda, who had asked him if good friends were half of the holy life. So I'll finish with this. The Buddha says good friends are the whole of the holy life. So that's my reflection. Thanks.
Thank you, Priscilla, for that. Well, I guess it's been quite an exciting time for us. Hearing from our panels, each one of them comes from the different aspects. Obviously, a practitioner, an educator, and also, obviously someone like Priscilla as well, a professional. So before we end this sharing from our panel speakers, I would like each of the panel speakers to sort of share with the audience in their last sharing. What do you think, what would you like our audience to take away from from today's talk? So just so that, a little summary of what you think is important for them to take away from today. I'll start with Venerable.
I think I would like to share, to emphasize again about embracing our humanness and also embracing our Buddha-ness. So as we walk our lives of ups and downs, just appreciate who we are and also appreciate that we do have the capacity to be the best that we can be, which is the Buddha.
Thank you, Venerable. And for yourself, Nadine, what would you like our audience to take away from today, what you've shared with us?
Be proactive in your health. Think about your health holistically. Make sure you have time to reflect on the ways that you might best contribute to society and your community, and do it. Do it now, because we know that meaning and connection is such a huge part of our health and can be really supportive. And this, in turn, can motivate us to take really good care of our bodies.
Thank you, Nadine. And last but not least, Priscilla, what would you like our audience to take away from what you've shared with us today?
Thanks, Ellen. So I'd summarize a few things that every day and moment is an opportunity to practice. But not if we can't do every moment, just choose one moment in the day. Take 10 minutes, like Nadine says. Secondly, as Venerable said, I think allow yourself to experience the pain and the suffering and that humanness, and be kind to yourself. And finally, one of those ways of being kind is building those social networks and community. So choose good friends, join groups, have a go, check in with Venerable, do an NTI course, check in with me. So we can all do it.
Thank you so much, everyone. And to each one of our panel speakers, really appreciate the time that you've taken today to share with us, obviously on the topic of how can Buddhism benefit our health. And I hope each of the audience can take away from today what little points that they have mentioned, and I guess work on each one of ourselves as well. So it's important to know that we are human and we still make mistakes. So don't blame yourself for it, because sometimes we need to cut ourselves some slacks as well. So taking from this, I like I said, I'd like to thank our panel speakers again. It is such a wonderful opportunity to have each of one of these panel speakers, and I hope that we have more chances in future to have more series of talks, especially on Buddhism and other aspects as well. So hopefully we get to welcome them back in future talks. So thank you everyone for joining us. I'll see you guys all next time.
Thank you.